You're watching the Adventist Asia Podcast, the official podcast of the Southern Asia Pacific Division headquarters of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
And the Lord said, I've set you apart.
Now we have a church in that care group.
We're bringing you inspirational stories and insightful interviews from across our diverse region. Hear from our church leaders, mission pioneers, and everyday believers as they share their journeys of faith and service.
In the process, she was baptized.
Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and X for updates and behind-the-scene glimpses. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify and YouTube and never miss an episode. Today, we get to know our region's director for Interfaith Services, Dr. Abner Dizon. You'll hear about the demanding realities of this ministry and why practical relational experience on the ground is so vital. We'll dive into contextualization, meeting people right where they are. You'll discover why building bridges, not walls, is absolutely key to sharing Jesus' love. Get ready for some eye-opening insights into making genuine connections and bringing light to our amazing, diverse world. Let's jump in the conversation.
So, I know you're a busy man, so thank you so much for being here with us.
Are we recording now?
Recording, Pastor? We got him. So I had you relax. I'm trying to relax you, Pastor. See? Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, well, it's been, I think, a long time coming. We've been looking with schedules and finding the perfect time.
Yeah, I did not know what you're talking about when you say podcast. So,
well, here you go. We're here to educate you, Pastor. No, I'm joking. But our podcast is here because we try to use this as a platform to get across not only to our members, but to the internet itself. And a lot of the things that we learn about how our church works comes from people like you, the people who are actually involved in making decisions, creating the programs that, not in the sense of uplifting our church, but the ministry and the mission of our church gets promoted. And when that gets promoted, I believe Jesus is promoted himself, Because this is your first time with us today, Pastor, could you share with us a few things about yourself, your background, ministry, and how you became part of the organization as our Interfaith director?
How many minutes? Okay. Because it's a long story, but I will try to shorten it. I actually did not start ministry in the denominational setting. When I say that, that means I've only been employed by the denomination since 2016 when I started teaching in the seminary in IAS. But before that, for about 21 or 22 years, I was with an organization called Philippine Frontier Missions, or PFM. And this is a supporting ministry. And our mission is to plant churches among what we call unreached people group or ethnic groups where we don't have a congregation. Most of them are Muslim. And so that's where I got the taste for Muslim ministry. From there, I went to, I studied more in mission, not because I wanted to have a degree, but because I wanted to know more how to do this thing. Because we're trying to reach the unreached, and we don't get that training, as you know, in the school. And so I had to learn. And then because I eventually finished my doctorate in missiology, I just needed a missiology professor.
Okay.
And so they called me there. It was a challenge to bring somebody who's not from the denominational ranks, to go there. But I was there for about 6 years. And then after that, SSD called me for this specific, I'm actually the first director for, I would say, AMR, although we call it Interfaith Services. Because they wanted to be intentional about reaching Muslims. Because back then, we were the largest in terms of number of Muslims in the whole world. Largest division. We were even larger than Middle East Union.
Wow.
So, unfortunately, right now, we are not the largest because we gave away.
We shared our territory with another sister territory.
Yeah, and I actually miss those two countries. But anyway, so that's my background. It's been a journey. I never thought of working for the denomination. And the reason for that is because I felt God was calling me to make a difference among the unreached. But now I see the denomination has gone towards that.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think the Lord has prepared me for such a time as this, when the denomination is ready and really promoting reaching the unreached, the real unreached. Not like sometimes we keep on using the terminology with a different meaning.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say unreached, it's just because they're hiking and it's difficult to reach. So it's not the missiological meaning of it. And so I'm really happy with the journey that God has brought me in. The Lord has given me credibility to my schooling, and then through connection with IAS, I have many students who are now leaders of the unions and mission and so on and so forth. And I really enjoy being here in SSD, making a difference. Because when I was with Philippine Frontier Missions, we were trying to do exactly the same thing I'm trying to do now, but we don't have money. So sometimes I think if we had double the amount of money we had back then, we could have accomplished a lot more.
Yeah.
But in some ways, the Lord made us humble, but we learned a lot. The things that I know right now, mostly I learned from when I was with Philippine Frontier Missions.
That's the question. That's the next question I want to ask you. Like, what was it like from being in the, I want to say, we call it expertise, but you were experiencing this versus, you going to school and having it in theory, in an essence, but it's a higher learning. What did you see in comparison to the experiences that you had and when you started learning in your missiologies?
Well, when I compare, let me give you let's say an example. When I was a theology student in the Philippine, it was back then Philippine Union College, now AUP, Adventist University of the Philippines. So I dropped out of school, so to speak, for 2 years. I was a theology student. And the background is I did not feel called to be a pastor of a church. And yet back then, if you're thinking to do full-time service to God, the pastoral line is the way.
There's a system or there's a process.
You have to be a pastor.
Yeah.
But I did not feel called to do that. So I felt I needed to make my calling sure. So I said, let's step out of school, go to the field, be a missionary. I went to Ifugao and I experienced cross-cultural mission, living in a place that does not speak Tagalog most of the time. So I was like in a different country. And then imagine you are going to buy soap and you have to speak in English, that kind of thing. And I had to learn the language. And in 6 months' time, I was giving Bible study in the language of the people. And I felt that God was the one showing me the gift of being a missionary. But my point is, while I was there, I had so many books that I brought from down here, photocopy them. I mean, in the Philippines, you're not supposed to.
But that was years ago, Pastor.
That. Yeah.
That was years ago.
But they said as long as you copy it right, it's okay. I mean,
copy it right.
So I brought a lot of these books and I was reading them in my spare time. At the same time, trying to understand how to evangelize, how to do ministry. I was a rural health student missionary, sponsored by FED back then, the Far Eastern Division. What I found out after I came back, after 1 year of being there, is that I learned so much more about ministry and mission in that 1 year than the entire 4 years that I went to college in PUC back then. So I think it is better to experience something first, and then maybe read while you are there to know the theory, and then come back and study.
Yeah.
And in the same way, when I went to for my master's and my doctoral studies, many of the things that the textbook are saying, in my mind, saying, okay, that makes sense because I experienced this. That makes sense because it's like this. Yes. Yeah. Or I would say, it does not resonate in my experience, but then it becomes, my mind becomes open and say, maybe that will work somewhere, but not here. And one of the things that the watchword in missiology is context. It's important. And so if you understand that a certain strategy may work in one country but will not probably work in your country, then you become a missiologist. So that's why when I came to IS to teach, I try my best to make everything practical. Many of my students are saying, you are known for making things practical. For me, it's not just about telling you the theories. It's about helping you use the theory so that you can understand what is happening. And I always bring them on a field trip. And many of the pastors, they said, we learned a lot. We saw what we're talking about in the classroom. We saw it there in the field.
Yeah, I love that way of teaching. Actually, when I was doing a program called 1 Year in Mission, and we brought 13 young adults from around our region, and I understood that if I brought them to Manila, this is a Christian culture, and I know that my division or my region is not a Christian culture, so I had to find ways that they could have that experience and expose it, and then as soon as they get back to their room, write me like 3 or 4 paragraphs. How would you contextualize this if you saw this, but you were in Bangkok or you were in Bangalore or you were in Jakarta? What would you do different? How would it fit your people? Yeah. And I saw that when they went home, they were quicker in applying said strategies, the theories that come from these books and from, and I see that's a really great way of contextualizing things. In your recent experience, Pastor, and exposure to the region here in SSD, what would you say in terms of interfaith? What are the, in terms of like heat signatures? What does it feel like here in SSD in terms of context and using the interfaith as a relationship, way of interacting with people? What's the different temperatures per country that you've noticed?
Well, aside from the real physical temperature,
yes, lately, Pastor, yes.
It used to be when we had Pakistan and Bangladesh, I would always spend maybe a month trying to grow my beard before going there. Because the way you look is very important in a Muslim context. And so even whenever I would travel, whenever I would go to Muslim context, Muslim place, I want to contextualize myself. And it worked many times when I was, for instance, when I visited Pakistan one time, I was in the airport and that was my longest beard back then. By the way, many times I envy those who have the long beard in Pakistan and Bangladesh. They have very long beard.
Maybe you need to bring JD next time.
Yeah, I know. But he said it's not good to covet.
Okay.
But in the airport, there was this guy approached me, very long beard, and he said, "Where are you from?" At first, he was very strong, and he said, "I'm from the Philippines." I said, "Oh, Muslim brother!" And then he started. I did not even have to answer. I mean, just because I had a beard,
it was like a connection.
Yes, and it felt so good. I mean, that's the beauty of having this. The philosophy of interfaith relations. When you no longer feel you're an outsider, you feel more secure. When I travel in Bangladesh, we had some people who have surrendered to the Lord, and they still look exactly like Muslims, and you feel very more comfortable because it's not what they look like, but there's a connection. So in the countries that I visited, I would say Indonesia is a very friendly Muslim country. In fact, I was shocked when I went there. I saw so many Muslims without a beard. Maybe because it's so difficult for the Malay to grow the beard. And they said, you look like what do they call it, a radical Muslim, because I have the beard and they don't have the beard. So it's a country that is very moderate in terms of moderate Islam. In fact, they say Indonesia is the smiling face of Islam. Of course, here and there would be some radicals, there will be some extremists, but majority of Muslims in Indonesia are let's say friendly to other religions. Malaysia, especially the Sabah and the Sarawak place, very you feel very comfortable even meeting with Muslims. Peninsular Malaysia is a little bit strict. They are more, shall we say, they're more strict. Muslims there are more strict compared to Indonesia. So when you're there, when I'm there, I'm really a little bit careful what to do and what not to do.
When you say strict, Pastor, is this something? I mean, is it a bad thing, or it's just rules within the area?
Yeah, what I would say is it's just like when you go to a church, and there's the church that does not allow you to preach without a
necktie.
So
or
there's a lot of rules.
Yeah,
that's what I mean.
Okay.
I mean, we are all Adventists, but there are this very conservative as opposed to the more liberal Adventists. So maybe I would say in Indonesia you meet a lot of liberal Muslims, whereas in Peninsular Malaysia you have more of the conservative or even ultra conservative Muslims. In South Philippines, you have a mix. Maybe because of the interaction with Christians, many of the Muslims there are quite friendly to, as long as you don't do evangelism.
Yeah.
I mean, they are very easy to get along with. And of course, here in North Philippines, many of them they live together with us. So that's mostly the temperature we can see. You know, when Muslims are in a minority in a place like Thailand, southern Thailand, it's not, in my opinion, it's not as dangerous to do evangelism there because they're a minority compared to a country where they're the majority. It will be more dangerous to do evangelism there. So I would actually encourage our leaders, our pastors, in places where Islam is a minority, then that's the place where you do a lot more, more direct witnessing. Whereas in places where there are a majority, then do a lot of good works and have that building relationship first. Of course, everywhere I would suggest start building relationship and bridges first before you even do direct evangelism.
You're probably like me and you wonder what the other Adventists are doing in our region, how they share the love of Jesus where they are. I'm always looking for inspirational stories like that. That's why I frequent Adventist.Asia. That's where I find the latest news from the mission field. It's also my go-to when it comes to Adventist resources that cater to the Southern Asia Pacific context. Did you know that you can also get the Adventist Asia stories straight into your inbox? Just sign up for the newsletter and receive regular updates on the mission work here in the Southern Asia Pacific Division. Go to Adventist.Asia for real-time, up-to-date news and resources, or sign up for the newsletter so you can get inspirational stories straight to your inbox. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
What do you think, Pastor, is that, I mean, of course, maybe as a regular member of the church, I would see a perspective of, loving your neighbor or reaching out. But what's the intentionality now with interfaith or being educated with interfaith relationships?
The number one thing that we, starting from the General Conference, AMR, up to the division, the first thing that we are trying to encourage our members, if you're interested in doing interfaith ministry, is be much in prayer. Because the Bible says the prince of this world has blinded the eyes of people. That's very true in interfaith context. We need to be prayerful. People who succeed in ministry based on our interviews, because whenever I travel, I interview, how do you do this? How come you were able to win that many people, and so on and so forth? In a context that's very difficult, they are very much into prayer. So the strategy is, first is prayer. And that's why during the month of Ramadan, we're encouraging our brethren all over SSD to be committed to pray for their Muslim friends, neighbors, and acquaintances, because God can do miracles when we have opened the door, the windows of heaven through prayer. Then you don't just pray. Ellen White says, if there's nothing else you do and just pray, you will eventually lose the subject for praying. And so you need to be in the community. You need to engage with people. You need to find ways, like Christ's method alone, right? Minister to their needs. And interestingly, especially here in the Philippines, the Muslims have a lot of needs. Many Muslims are wealthy, but many more Muslims here are really suffering as a result of the conflict, of being displaced, and prejudice. Many of them are not able to get good jobs just because their name is Muslim. I remember talking with a Muslim young person in Mindanao. He said, I went to Manila and tried to get a job in the Jollibee. And of course, he tried to look like a Christian, but when he submitted his application with a Muslim name, they said they did not want to give him a job. So there's a lot of poverty and needs. I would recommend that we as a church, we're a loving church. We do this all the time with other Christians. We do a lot of community services. We do a lot of projects. We do help and things like that. Why not intentionally reach out to Muslims in the community? And the good news, I don't know if it's good news, but for me, the good news is almost every municipality or especially city here in the Philippines will have Muslims there. You have the vendors, you would have the bajao, you have even here in Silang alone, you have the bajaos and you have vendors and so on and so forth. So I hope we can intentionally do something. And then the third thing, the third part of the strategy is we need to develop materials that are Muslim friendly. What we have right now are Christian friendly. And many of the words there does not resonate with the Muslim. And then our programs, we have media ministries. We are very good. Facebook is filled with so many people doing their own thing. What if someone would intentionally be Muslim friendly and start blogging and do all of these things? I think we will be able to connect with Muslims more when we do that. Unfortunately, those who are either blogging or having radio program, they have a confrontational approach to
trying to pointing out the wrongs in one culture.
Because the Adventist Church is more trained to do debates or to show we're right, you're wrong, and then leave that church because you are wrong and you come to us, only to find out sometimes there's wrong things here as well. So that's where training them or giving them resources comes in. That's the importance of disseminating the right philosophy of ministry to the interfaith faith groups.
You know, you shared a lot. I actually like that point of view where you shared on prayer being one of the key strategies for interfaith. That can sound easy, of course, easier said than done. But as an Adventist, what are some of our misconceptions maybe when it comes to interfaith or with Muslim relationships? What are some of where do you see some of our reservations that we need to realign our misconceptions for us to better understand, the work that is in interfaith ministry?
Well, the number one thing that comes to my mind is we think that if we try to build bridges, we're watering down the gospel. In reality, somebody said, we hate what we don't understand. We're actually afraid of them, and therefore we want to keep the walls rather than the bridge. And so when Seventh-day Adventists see someone trying to bridge with a Muslim, they will say, "Oh, this guy is ecumenical now," or he's no longer pure Adventist. The pure Adventist would stand by his truth, whether they understand or not, and so on and so forth. So they think if you the word we use in missiology is contextualization. And it's true that the beginning of contextualization comes from the Roman Catholic Church. And the background is when many of the pagans wanted to become Christians, there was one priest who asked the bishop in Rome what to do. Their buildings are temples of Diana or something like that. Should we destroy them? And the answer was, baptize them. I mean, baptize not just the pagans, but baptize the buildings. And so Zeus became Jupiter and Diana became Virgin Mary and so on and so forth. So that's let's say over contextualization. And but the principle of contextualizing in the sense that when you're talking with a Jew, use the Jewish thought patterns. That is very, very relevant, and that's biblical. Paul did that. He said, to the Jew, I became a Jew. To the Gentile, I became a Gentile. To the ones with the law, I became like one. To those who don't have the law, I became, so that I can win some. So, and Ellen White has so much to say about varying your method. So just because you change the method doesn't mean you change the message. But that's the first criticism against AMR ministry. They said you're going too much. You're giving Islam too much, let's say, credit or so on and so forth. The second thing that I think in terms of misconception is that form and meaning is always the same. It always goes together.
Okay.
For instance, we had this experience. You know this experience we had, where we put some Islamic music to a program that we were producing or broadcasting. And there was this very, I would say, ultra-conservative Seventh-day Adventist and say, this is connected to Islam. Why are you using this? When you use this, you are promoting Islam. In missiology, we say the form can change and the meaning can change. It may be the same form, but the way you interpret it will change the meaning. In the same way, it should not be seen as just one part. It needs to include the entire part. Because in reality, we have adopted many things from non-Christian background. Somebody said the piano and the organ used to be part of the bar. And that's why, and there are places where they don't allow you to play the guitar because it's connected, or the drums. And so the problem is when we have many who are monocultural, meaning
they don't have that exposure.
Yes, and they think the only way to be a good Adventist is my Adventist package, and that hinders bringing in people from another ethnic group and from another culture, because in order for them to become a Seventh-day Adventist, they have to be a Tagalog Seventh-day Adventist or even an American Seventh-day Adventist, and that's why we get people from North America come here and say, this is how we do church. This is so that is a big hindrance in terms of reaching interfaith groups. So those are just some of the stuff that
with your experience lately, Pastor, or throughout the years, where have you seen, I mean, is there what we could call a success story per se, where one strategy worked for that part of the world or for that region?
Interestingly, my wife said, how does SSD evaluate your work? And of course, you have to have, what do you call it, ROI, the return of investment, that kind of thing. And I said, it depends on who you're talking to, what your success is. If success means baptism, then you will not see a lot of that in interfaith services. because when the first time that the president of SSD back then called me to serve here, the first question I asked when they were interviewing me was, do you believe in long-term evangelism? And some people, when they think of long-term evangelism, maybe just 1 year. But in interfaith services, it may be as long as 5 years, 6 years. I remember when I was in Philippine Frontier Missions, our first Muslim convert took us 6 years before we were able to baptize one Muslim convert. Of course, as the years go by and as more pastors and workers are involved intentionally in sowing seeds, it seems to be getting shorter and shorter depending on the context. But if the definition of success is having Muslim communities welcome you as if you're part of them, then we have many experiences where at the beginning they would want to kill you, but then at the end of some time they would protect you from others who want to kill you, that kind of thing. I've seen a lot of that in Philippine Frontier Missions. There was one instance where after being in the island for some time, maybe a few years, there was this guy who became a patient. And he went, as he was talking to the missionary, he brought out his .45 caliber pistol on the table, and he said, "You know what this is?" And I said, and the missionary said, "What is that?" He said, "This is the gun I was going to use on you because they were hiring me to kill you." I mean, the Muslims were hiring him to kill him. And I said, but I told them, no, I cannot kill him because he's the doctor of our village. If the definition of success is getting a Muslim to read the Bible and believe in the Bible, we have many successes like that. I mean, usually, traditionally, Muslims say the Bible is corrupt. You are not supposed to touch it. There are even people who would not even physically touch a Bible because they say, if you touch it, it will corrupt you. I had an experience where we did evangelism in Cotabato City, and we used some of the Quran to show them that the Bible is inspired and so on. And soon, about maybe 15 Muslims, the crowd is maybe 50 or 60. And then about 15 every night would come with all of the hijab. They would sit separately. They don't want to be with the Christian. But then when we started doing small group discussion, because we wanted them to open the Bible, they said, this is the first time we've ever opened the Bible. And then they said, oh, now we see there's not much big difference. I mean, what you are teaching in the Bible is also being taught in the Quran. And about 3 of them were baptized. And for me, I always say, 1 Muslim's baptized is equivalent to 10 or 20 Christians with the energy and the effort. And there are many others. Just recently, I had, I call it AMR evangelism, but there was no baptism. But I had about 40 ustads. Ustads are the scholars, Muslim scholars. These are people who really know the Quran, who really know theology in terms of Islam, but they sat there and listening to our presentation of Adventist doctrines. And at the end of it, they thanked me for sharing those things with them. But of course, it's not direct evangelism in terms of Bible and Bible only.
It's like a reference.
It's a more comparative
between the Quran and what the Bible
teaches.
Yes,
and so in terms of success, I'm seeing those kind of successes. But even if your definition of success is baptism, I'm seeing baptism among Muslims more than I would have expected. For instance, last year, the report came from all of the Muslim priority unions. Like, I think there are 5 Muslim priority unions, 2 in Indonesia, you have Malaysia, and 2 here in South Philippines. And the report last year was there was about 490 Muslims baptized all over SSD. And that is, in my thinking, that's phenomenal because it used to be here and there. We get one, we try to, we call it extract them. And then we have problems because then the family wanted to kill them. We bring them somewhere else and so on and so forth. But most of those who are baptized are still in their community. And so in my book, that's a success. And I'm seeing a lot of our pastors, a lot of our church members, they are feeling the burden to intentionally reach out. And I think that's a good burden because in SSD, as you said, this is a non-Christian majority division. Unfortunately, we're based in a Christian country, so to speak. And so many times we forget that we live in a territory that are non-Christian. And so sometimes we have to remind ourselves, yes, we have a lot more baptisms in Christian context. But even if all of the Philippines become Seventh-day Adventists and many of the unreached are still there, I don't think Jesus will yet come.
You show that in your sharing with me this morning is it's more of getting our members educated, whether it's on the misconceptions, gathering for intentional prayer. This needs, an information flow. Are there resources or books that our members can get a hold of that will give them more insight to, the importance of this and how to get involved as well?
Yeah, actually, that's one of the opportunities we have right now. When I started with Philippine Frontier Missions in 1992, there was hardly any material available from the Adventist side on how to reach Muslims. Today, you have so many choices. Just to show you, we have this training material that my wife and I wrote for the women's ministry. Now, even though this is a manual for women's ministry, the principles still apply to men as well. So this material has been used. There was one Adventist lady in Indonesia. She went through the training, and at the end of it, she started giving Bible study to Muslims. They said about 15 Muslims were getting Bible study through her. And so I myself was amazed. I mean, I never thought it would be that successful. But this is a good resource. We also have other books. Another one that I've written for the Middle East Union that helps train those who are what we call tent makers. Those who go to a Muslim context, working as a secular, doing a secular job. Plus the GC AMR, the Adventist Muslim Relations Center at the GC, have 3 volumes of training materials for AMR ministry. But aside from that, we have materials that teaches you how to explain to Muslims, number one, why should Muslims believe in the Bible? Okay, this is a Quranic study. So some of them may ask, why do you use Quran? Why not just the Bible? Well, because the Quran is the authority for them. The Bible is corrupt. So if you keep on telling them things that are from a corrupt book,
they won't believe you.
They won't believe you. Like just like somebody from let's say the Mormons giving you a Bible study using the Book of Mormons, then that does not resonate with your belief. But if they teach you using your authority, then it will be. So this is helping prove that the Bible is not corrupt based on the Quran. And this is about what does the Quran say about the second coming. And this one, what does the Quran say about the prophets and the books. So we have a lot of materials available. Enough materials I did not bring, but SSD also has produced 26 lessons, Bible lessons for Muslim seekers. And if they will get in touch with us, we can share the PDF with them. All of this are available in PDF.
I know that we're here in the Philippines, but I know you have counterparts. Do your counterparts around our region have access to these books?
All of this have been translated in Bahasa. So it's available for Indonesia and Malaysia. I think it is... both of this have been translated in Tagalog, and we will probably have the others translated in Tagalog as well. English is available. It's available in Bahasa, and some of it is available in Tagalog. But here in the Philippines, anyway, people would
English,
prefer to have the English ones.
Amazing. Knowing that we have this rich set of resources can help, maybe there's someone right now who has tuned in or is listening in or is searching for these type of materials. What would be your challenge or inspiration to them, to those churches or to those individuals who may have that calling such as yours to reach out to our brothers of the Muslim faith? What would be your inspiration to them to get involved or to learn more?
Well, I remember the verse that says, "Do not grow weary in doing good, for in due time we shall reap." And that's exactly true for interfaith ministry. Keep on doing what you're doing, as long as it's the right kind of doing. Read and attend seminars when seminars are available, and at the same time consult with our counterpart, like the AMR, director of the union, and the mission. We want to collaborate with each other. By the way, the Interfaith Services Office is not just working alone. Many times we collaborate with the health department, health ministries. We also collaborate with the women's ministry and family ministries, because these are a very integral part of the interfaith communities. So try to find ways for you to be involved. Finally, just have friendship with a Muslim, and as you befriend them and as you pray for them, ask the Lord to open doors. And by the way, include in your prayer that God will give dreams and vision, because that's actually one of the ways that Muslims turn to Christ, through dreams, vision, miracles, and things like that. So that's where our prayer comes in. We need to intercede for our Muslim friends, if you have Muslim friends, or start developing Muslim friends. Here in Cavite, I would encourage every Seventh-day Adventist, patronize the Muslim vendors, become friends with them, and let them know you don't eat unclean food. Tell them we don't eat haram, and just see how the Lord do things. And hopefully you will see the fruit of your labor. If not, maybe you'll just meet them in heaven.
Yeah. I love how you place that, Pastor. It's very intentional. The ministry is not just to people who look like us or dress like us. The intentionality is befriending people, praying for people who may not look like you. That's the intentionality. Pastor, it's been a good few minutes talking with you. I know there's more we could dive into, but maybe in a second podcast with you. I think in the next podcast, I think I want to dive into what you just shared just a few seconds ago about the dreams and visions. I think that's quite interesting to learn, to see how that connects, where our prayers or the outcome of our prayers is becoming a reality in these.
There's actually a website. There's an Adventist ministry called Dreams of Isa. It's just one word, dreamsofisa.org. And you see so many testimonies of Muslims, their dreams, and the ministry of this website is they are helping interpret the dreams. And some of those dreams are very amazing. I mean, some people dream of 3 angels flying. And they say,
sounds familiar.
What does that mean? And then, well, of course, you just point them to Revelation, and then they say, wow, this is it. So anyway.
Maybe that will be our next one.
Okay.
So thank you so much for your time, for being with us, and we appreciate the work that you're doing in our division and the time that you've given us today.
Thank you for having me here.
Anytime.